everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan, and today I've got 5 books that you should read if you're short on time. And that could mean a variety of things. Maybe you are a big reader, but you're looking for short books to fit into a readathon. Maybe you're not a big reader, you don't read a ton of books every month, and you're just looking for a short book that is digestible for you to finish in a short amount of time, and you're looking for a good recommendation. No matter what, these are books that I think are worth a read. And a bonus is that they just so happen to be shorter reads. These books are not necessarily the shortest 5 books that I've ever read, more like books that may have a short page count, or they are just very quick reads, easy to fly through, or they just pack a real punch for how short of a book they are. And maybe it's all 3 of them. So I've got one book for every genre that I like to read to recommend here for you. So hopefully you can find at least one to pick up that will suit your reading needs. So the first book that I want to recommend is for if you are looking for a contemporary, specifically a hard-hitting contemporary, which is my favorite type of contemporary. I want to recommend The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. This is a book that follows a middle-aged man as he's kind of recollecting his time as a child with his childhood friends as they're going through school and going through a lot of really difficult issues. And this book is only like 163 pages long, so it's very short, but when I tell you that this book hit me in the gut, I mean that. And I feel like that is so impressive for such a short book to really impact me so much, and for me to feel so connected to the characters, so shocked by what they've gone through. And this is a book that I have never heard talked about on BookTube. It's won a couple of awards. This is the winner of the Man Booker Prize sticker on the front here. So it's definitely critically acclaimed, but I've never heard any booktubers talk about it. It is a little bit older of a book. It's from, let's see, it was published in 2011. But I think it's worth a read now. So if you have not read this book, if you have not heard this book, but you are a fan of hard-hitting contemporaries, definitely recommend picking this one up. The next book that I want to recommend is a classic. I am not a huge classic reader. I've read maybe 10 or 15 classics ever, so I definitely don't know all of the classics out there, and I can't recommend you the best classics in general. But a classic that I found very digestible as kind of a newbie classic reader, and one that read fast enough and easily enough for me to get through it and understand it okay, was The Alchemist. If you have never heard of The Alchemist before, it is a story about a boy who goes on a journey throughout Europe looking for treasure. And while he's on that journey, he learns a bunch of life lessons from different people that he meets. And this book, in my opinion, is deep enough and metaphorical enough that if you really want to dig into a classic and learn all about the meaning and the types of writing and all of that, there's plenty of that there. But also it's entertaining enough of a story that if you're not looking for all of that philosophical stuff, you can just enjoy the story that's being told. This was one of the first classics that I read and I enjoyed it, and so I think that if you have not read many classics, this would be a good one to start with. And it's very short, so it's not too intimidating to start with, but also if you are a big classics reader and just haven't gotten to this one yet, I think that it's worth a read, like I said, because you can dig into those deeper meanings, deeper life lessons and things like that. So this book clocks in at 167 pages, so under 200 pages. I feel like that is very short for a classic, and easy to knock out in whatever time frame you have available. The next recommendation that I have is a nonfiction book. I read a good amount of nonfiction, but I definitely don't read the most nonfiction out of anybody, here on BookTube. So again, it's not like I have every nonfiction book to pull from, but I do think that I've read enough to know what makes a good nonfiction book and what makes a preachy, pretentious nonfiction book. And the one that I want to recommend is Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. And this is a nonfiction book that is probably pitched more as like a business book for if you're a business leader, you're trying to start your own business, if you're in management, things like that. But I would recommend it to anybody. If you have not read this book, and it's another one that I haven't heard a lot talked about, so I'm assuming you haven't, then I beg you to please pick this up. This will help you in every facet of your life. Basically, it's all about relationships, relationships with your family, relationships with your significant other, relationships with your coworkers, relationships with random people you just meet on the street. It's told as a novel, which I think is a very unique way for a nonfiction book to be told. It follows this man, I don't remember his name, but basically it follows him as he's learning the lessons in this book. And why I think that works is because he asks the questions that I feel like a lot of us ask while reading nonfiction books. Like, a lesson will be taught and then he'll have all these follow-up questions, like, what about in this situation? Or what about in this situation? And it's the questions that we don't get to ask as readers because someone's not actually telling us these lessons, but it's questions that are probably running through your mind as you're reading this book. And so I feel like it's just so well done, and because it's so applicable to every person's life, I recommend this to every single person. I read this as a book club book for work, and it was great in that capacity because there are a lot of discussion points within this book, but if I haven't sold it to you enough already, just please read this book and then recommend it to everyone else you know to read it. This book is not 18 pages, that's the end part. It's about 190 pages, so still under 200 pages. And I feel like that is so good for a nonfiction book because you don't want all that extra fluff. You just want to get to the good stuff, the real information, and this book does that. It has stuck with me for a couple of years now since I've read it, and I plan to definitely reread it multiple times into the future just to remind myself of the things that this book brings up. So highly recommend, even if you read a lot of nonfiction books. I think a big gripe I have with nonfiction is that it seems like they all say the same thing. They all just repeat things we've already heard before. This doesn't do that. This tells you new things that may seem like common sense, but it's way beyond common sense. So, okay, I need to stop ranting about this book, but please pick that one up if you have not read it already. And then the next book that I want to recommend is a science fiction book. So I am a fan of science fiction, especially like what I would consider light-ish science fiction. I'm not scared of the deeper science fiction, but I like when it kind of is rooted in reality and it's something that, is somewhat feasible, could happen in the somewhat near future. And the book that I want to recommend for that is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This has recently been getting some buzz because the sequel just came out, A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. I have not read that one yet because I just read this one in preparation for that book to come out. But if this has not been pitched to you yet, let me pitch it to you. This follows this 23-year-old young woman who is wandering home one night in New York City when she stumbles upon this humongous statue that was never there before, and she calls up her buddy to film her. She makes a YouTube video about it, and then she wakes up the next morning. She's gone viral because she was the first person to basically discover what they are assuming is alien contact to Earth. And it goes from there. If that didn't sell you, there's more that I can pitch. There is this puzzle sequence in the middle of the book that I loved. I love books with games or books with puzzles, things that a main character has to solve. I think that's really interesting, and that's a huge chunk of this book. It also explores social media a lot because Hank Green is a social media person. I feel like he did that really well. He knows what the internet world is like, and I feel like that was well reflected in this book. This is not necessarily the shortest book of all time. It's about 330 pages long, so it's not incredibly long, but it's not super short either. But I feel like it is very compulsively readable. I know I read this in just a couple of days, and so maybe if you have to squeeze in, a science fiction prompt for a readathon or something, I think that this one has enough real-world elements to satisfy someone who doesn't read a lot of science fiction. But I love science fiction, and I still loved it, again, because of those kind of extra elements, and I'm super excited to read the sequel. The sequel is not a short book by any means, so maybe that wouldn't fit in the theme of this video, but this first one, I think, if you're short on time, if you're looking for a quick science fiction book, this will satisfy you and not be too long and hard to get through. And the last book that I have to recommend is a thriller, and thriller is my favorite genre of books. So this is the one that I've probably read the most books in a singular category for. So I feel like I am qualified to give this recommendation to say that if you're gonna read a thriller, I want you to read a good one. So I might as well recommend you my favorite thriller, and that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is a thriller about this woman named Lowen. Yeah, Lowen, who is hired to write a book series continuation for an author who was in an accident and isn't able to complete her own series herself. So Lowen moves into this author's house to work in her office and dig into that author's notes on the books and where she might have wanted the series to go so that Lowen can continue it on correctly and do it justice. And while she's there at that author's house, some weird things happen. There are some mixed reviews on this book, I think because Colleen Hoover is usually a romance writer. And there is a small romance element in this book, but it is not a romance book. So do not go into this book expecting lovey-dovey romance things to happen. It's a thriller. I think it's a thriller through and through. It is my favorite thriller. It surprised me. There are twists along the way. I love when something happens at the end that makes you just be like, what just happened? And I don't think that's a spoiler for me. That would really hook me and make me want to get to the end of a book. This is another one that is not super short. It's about 314 pages, so it's not too long either. It's in the low 300s, which I would consider pretty short. But again, it's compulsively readable. It's something that you just want to get to the end to figure out what's happening. And so that's why I would recommend it. Maybe you're not a big thriller reader and you're just looking for something that you can get through quickly and that will kind of get you accustomed to the genre. I think this is a great one. Maybe you are a thriller lover like me and you're just looking for something else to do something a little bit different from all of the thrillers you've been reading. This does not fall into a bunch of the traps or the tropes that I get sick of in thrillers. This is definitely its own unique thing. It has stood up against a bunch of really great thrillers that I've been reading lately and has stayed in my #1 spot. So I think it is well worth the time that you're going to spend reading it, but it's not that long of a book either. So that's why I included it in this video. So with that, those are the 5 books that I would recommend to read if you're short on time. Most of them are pretty short books, under 200 pages, but the ones that are a little bit longer are well worth it in my opinion. So I hope that you have gotten at least one recommendation from this video. Let me know if you did, which book you are looking to pick up, and let me know what your short book recommendations are or books that you think are so worth it and pack in a punch for their page count. I would love to know. Those are some of my favorite types of books, the ones that I'm going into, maybe expecting them to be quick, light reads that don't really impact me in the long term, but end up really standing out in my brain. I love those, so always looking for recommendations. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else, so thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.